How are you feeling today as opposed to last Monday when I talked to you?
The juices continue to flow. I think last night's 2 episodes really took me back to the center of 90s, really late 80s and early 90s basketball, because the feelings, and you could see the raw emotion on MJ's face in talking about Isaiah and the Bad Boys and the Pistons. For those people who didn't understand that, he's correct. Back then, you played, especially in your division, you played each other 6 times, 3 at home, 3 on the road. So you built up a lot of disdain and dislike towards certain teams. And Detroit was one of those teams. But I will say this, and I know looking at the videos and the images of taking him out the air, a lot of teams were like that. The Knicks were like that. Miami was like that. Milwaukee was like that. The Celtics were like that. There was a lot of teams that played a very physical presence, especially in the Eastern Conference, because we only played the Eastern Conference teams twice. But especially in the East, that was the brand of basketball. But you could see on his face that MJ is still living with it. And I agree with him because, we had to face him 6 times and go against that bad boy defense. But you couldn't be a punk. You couldn't be a punk. And I remember, going against, Dumars. And
what do you mean, punk? You not back down?
Not back down, and you couldn't just settle. See, they wanted you to settle. They didn't think you could were you up for the punishment? So Joe would tell me, because he was like the gentle guy on that team. And we guarded one another, and he's like, Reg, I'm just telling you, if you beat me and you get into the paint, you know what's going to happen. Well, I know what's going to happen. What do you want me to do? Sit out here and just continue to shoot? I just couldn't sit out here and shoot jump shots. So you had to take the punishment. That's just how it was, right? You couldn't be a punk. You had to get in there and take it. So what? You get up and, you move on.
That style, though, like the Pistons
didn't. It was ugly.
Yeah. But the Pistons didn't care if you liked them or not. Like, they wanted you to be. If I'm a Piston now, if I'm Isaiah or Bill Laimbeer, I like that Michael Jordan's still mad.
Yes.
I mean, that's why you were playing. You wanted to rent space in somebody's head. But then you turn around and you go, did Michael rent space in their heads too? Because then you walk off the floor and you're not even going to acknowledge Jordan. You're just feeding the beast if you do that. Like, I'd rather be nice with Mike than if I'm gonna tug on Superman's cape. It ain't going well. It's not going to go well from this point on.
Well, if you're Laimbeer, Mahorn, Isaiah, to a certain degree, job well done, because you're absolutely right. They did not care. At the time, and they're right, it was Larry, it was Magic, the next was Michael, and all those 3 teams that I just mentioned played a beautiful brand of basketball. You had Showtime, Fast Break, the beautiful passes by Magic, and the finishes by Worthy and Kareem, and you had the beautiful, stroke of Larry Legend, and they played well as a team in the championships. And you had Michael, who was, 5 to 6 feet above everyone else, floating on air. And then you had the Bad Boys, right, who didn't care, who played a physical style of basketball. But guess what? It worked. And that model and brand went to New York for Pat Riley. It went to Miami with Pat Riley. So that brand of basketball was around for a while. There was a niche for it, and teams tried to adopt that. And now you see in today's games how they have gone away from that, and everything is more so catered towards the offense now. They would much rather see you score 115, 120, 125 points as opposed to the Pistons brand of basketball when it was 80 to 75, right?
Oh, it was so bad. Do you think that Michael single-handedly said, I don't want Isaiah on the Dream Team?
Yes. And I know, look, let me just say this. Isaiah Thomas should have been on that 92 Dream Team. And people are like, well, what do you have taken off? John Stockton, Clyde Drexler, one of those two guys, Christian Laettner, one of those three guys. Isaiah Thomas should have been on that team because of what he had done in the league, his stature. He had won 2 championships. He should have been on that team.
Do you know for a fact that Mike was the reason why Isaiah didn't make the dream team?
I wouldn't say for a fact, but I think that is the unwritten rule that people talk about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's MJ alone.
But how did Mike get this past Chuck Daly, who was Isaiah's coach, who coached the dream team? That's what I don't understand. Where
it has nothing to do with Chuck Daly, because at the time this was Commissioner Stern putting this team together.
But do you think the commissioner said? Do you think he said, "Mike, I want you on the dream team," and Mike said to the commissioner, "I will, but these are the guys I want. This is the guy I don't want."
No, I wouldn't say he said, "These are the guys I want." I believe MJ probably said, "Okay, I'll do it," but Isaiah cannot be on this team. He didn't make the roster, but he made sure someone wasn't on the roster.
But what bothers people or bothered people about Isaiah Thomas?
Because he's so cute, the smile, cute little teddy bear. He was little in stature, but he was. You talk about the bad boys. He might have been the meanest and toughest of the bad boys, but you didn't think about that because of the smile.
Yeah.
And he had won, a championship at IU under Bobby Knight, and he formed that team. He formed them into that tough, take him out the air. But it was Lambeer and Mahorn and Buddha and Rodman and John Sally. They took all the hits, because they were the bad boys. But Isaiah was he was conducting all of that behind the scenes.
Talking to Reggie Miller, the Hall of Famer, Turner Sports NBA analyst. I try to tell people how great Rodman was with the Pistons. And I just, when he was with the Bulls, he became a little more one-dimensional where he was just rebounding. He wasn't the great defender he was in Detroit. He took pride in guarding Bird or James Worthy, and he just was a pogo stick. He just ran all day. But can you imagine a coach who says to his player, you can go to Vegas for a couple of days in season?
Yeah.
And they gave him his blessings to go there so he could shack up with Carmen Electra in Vegas.
Look, what you see from that image in the videos, that could not be done today because of camera phones, smartphones, because of social media. If you look at the footage, there are no cameras going off. People aren't holding cell phones up when he's on stage and his shirt is off. You could do those. I mean, it's a human GPS nowadays, your phone. So you could track everyone's movement. That could not happen in today's era because of social media. But, I go to tell people, think about if you're Phil Jackson and the Bulls, you have arguably 3 of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in the game on one team, MJ, Scotty, and Dennis. So if those guys played in today's games where you switch everything, every pick and roll, that's like lockdown city. And I try to tell people but he didn't score. Like, what did he do well? He did, minus the scoring, the rebounding, the positioning, and all the toughness. I don't think I've told this story before. When Mike was filming Space Jam, they built the Jordan Dome for him so he could work out. And he would film all day, 6 o'clock call time, and he would be done like around 6 p.m., 7 o'clock. And then we would go up and actually, it was the best runs ever. So they called it the Jordan Dome, and all the top ballers came up on the Warner Brothers lot.
Invitation only?
Somewhat invitation. I mean, Michael didn't say who he wanted, but it was all the top players. So you had, Eddie Jones at the time, Juwan Howard. Guys, I believe Magic came through once or twice, but it was unbelievable. No riffraff, but it was nothing. Hard fouls. And this is at the time where they were thinking about signing Rodman. And my good friend and my teammate at UCLA, Jack Haley, who had been Rodman's babysitter in San Antonio and then in Chicago, it was close to them signing him. And other than MJ, during those runs, Rodman, I mean, I had played against him, obviously, when he was in Detroit and San Antonio, was phenomenal. And usually in pickup games, Dan, you know this, it's all about scoring and, Ole defense. So what was he going to bring in a pickup game? Phenomenal. And the little exercise that he did last night about tracking the rebounds, and he could tell the arcs and the rotations, it's absolutely 100% true. The instincts that dude had was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. Just can't imagine if you go. Imagine somebody nowadays going, "Hey, can I go to Vegas for?" Like, remember when Johnny Manziel? They had a weekend off and he went to Vegas. I mean, people went crazy over that. But with Dennis, I think Phil's genius is he knew how to treat everybody as an individual. A lot of coaches treat everybody collectively, and I think Phil was able to look at you individually and say, this is what you need. That's different from what he needs.
And another fascinating look, what's great about this doc is the in-game adjustments that the great players make. The interaction that MJ had with Rodman about, a particular switch when Oak is coming behind me. The great ones know how to adapt on the fly because everyone has a game plan coming into a game. And then, like Mike Tyson said, once you get punched in the mouth, you got to be able to adapt. Those guys were able to adapt on the fly to any situation. And just to hear the talking, I mean, that's what I missed probably the most in watching this thing, because it's those minor adjustments as teammates and as brothers that you make that makes the difference between, being a champion and, being a runner-up. And that is what's fascinating to see.
I know we get into this discussion. It's like who's the greatest of all time, and then we go back and forth with that. But when you start to look at great teams, we look at it's really the generation in which they played in. The Celtics of the 60s wouldn't come anywhere near a team now. The Bulls in the 90s, though, it feels like they could play physical if they had to. They could run if they needed to. They could play great defense if they needed to. They would have adapted to become better three-point shooters because the game would have called for that. And if I took Golden State with Durant and Steph and Clay and put them back in the 90s, so if I do it the other way around, I put Jordan's Bulls, now against Golden State, and I take Golden State now and put them back with the Bulls, how do you think that fares?
I think the Bulls would have been unbelievable in today's generation because we just mentioned about them being able to switch everything, which they do in today's game, and you have three of the best on-ball perimeter defenders.
Would they beat Golden State with Durant?
Yes.
The 7-game series.
Here's my thing. If you put that Golden State team in the 90s, the question is going to be because back then you could hold, you could hit, you saw the physical play.
Yeah.
Is Steph going to be able to hold up to that? Right? KD, I believe, could. Durant, yes. Possibly Clay. Is Steph. Now, I know Steph would be able to adapt because we all would have to, but you get to hold back then. You get to be in the clinches. You get to take people out the air. Is he able to take that punishment? Could you imagine if LeBron and KD took that punishment that MJ and a lot of us had to take in the 90s? I just wonder how they would – I would love to see that. Because now that's a flagrant foul and possibly a 5-game suspension.
Well, but you wouldn't be expecting those calls. It's if I say LeBron is the same size as Karl Malone with a better handle, so Karl could handle it. I'm looking at LeBron. If he doesn't know, hey, wait a minute, I'm supposed to get those calls, or they would give me those calls in another era. If he knows only what he's playing, I think LeBron would be great in any era.
LeBron could have played 60 in any era.
Yeah.
LeBron in any era.
Yeah.
Some players you're wondering, could they play in any era?
But would you take if
KD could play in any era.
If I took Kobe and Shaq versus the Golden State Warriors with Durant.
That's an unbelievable matchup because no one had an answer for Shaq. In those first three championships, no one had an answer for Shaq. I don't know what Chicago would have done.
But if I put
Kobe,
them against Golden State,
Kobe and MJ, that would have been I still give the edge to MJ, but Kobe would have kept him honest.
And you got Pippen, who's going to match with him. You got Rodman. What if I put Shaq and Kobe versus Golden State with Durant, Steph, Clay?
Okay, now what are you playing in today's rules or
today's rules?
2000 rules?
Today's rules.
You don't have a people. Shaq was a beast. Man, you never asked for that dude, man.
What, you don't think JaVale McGee is going to be able to stop him? No. But you think that Shaq, Kobe versus the Bulls, they would give them a better run than the Golden State Warriors with Durant, Steph, and Clay?
I do.
Because of Shaq. And Kobe is going to go, him and Mike are going to go, maybe not toe-to-toe, but it's going to be pretty close.
He would keep them honest.
Yes, both ends of the floor. Hey, before I let you go, NBA talking about opening up camps here May 1st, opening up facilities. What do you think? What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, if they open up practice facilities, that means guys can go in and actually get workouts in. It's probably going to take most players anywhere from 2.5 to 3 weeks to get in some type of shape. I mean, I think you're looking at mid-June again. If you're going to resume basketball, we're talking about mid-June to late June of getting NBA basketball back. Again, with no fans, though.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, but shouldn't you already be in shape? How out of shape can you be?
Be in shape? How are they be in shape? They've been at home. What, on a treadmill?
Well, there's home gyms.
That's not basketball shape.
Well, it's not like
there's a difference.
They're not going to have a beer gut.
No, but conditioning, it's going to take a while. To get your legs back, it's going to take a while.
Do you believe that Steph Curry doesn't have a basketball hoop at his house?
I believe he does not have a basketball hoop at his house.
Isn't that amazing?
No, most players don't have an indoor court.
Well, no, but even an outdoor. You got it. Do you have an outdoor court?
I do.
Okay.
But shooting outdoors and doing drills outdoors is a lot different than doing drills indoor.
Who's the second best shooter in your neighborhood?
I would say Paul Pierce is around here somewhere. I would say Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce is around here somewhere. I would say Paul George. Paul George.
Okay.
Paul George.
So I would be the third best shooter if I lived in the neighborhood.
You would be the third best shooter in Calabasas.
Thank you.
Come to Calabasas High, baby.
The tough courts of Calabasas High.
Oh, it's tough out here, man. The mean street of Calabasas. It's tough out here.
All right, we're going to check in with you when your episode. Is your episode 8 or 9? Do you know?
It's one of those two, from what I've been hearing.
All right, find out from our good friend Gail when you get featured here in the documentary.
Again, I have no idea how they I'm just telling y'all now. I have no idea how they frame this, nor do I care, like what he said about Isaiah being a a-hole.
Yeah.
I might be in that same vein. So I apologize. I'm really a nice guy, but
not on the court. Not on the court.
I was only doing my job.
I know you were. That's why you became a Hall of Famer. All right, Reg. Thanks, bud. Talk to you soon.
Y'all the best.
All right. That's Reggie Aloysius Miller.